In Australia, two young tourists, Heather and Greg, are looking for Captain Tucker's ship. They learn that the man is holding an event known as the Tucker Experience, where crew members are put in protective cages to see sharks in the sea. As soon as they meet the captain, he agrees to take them, but jokingly warns them that the trip could be dangerous. The two tourists don't mind and set off on Tucker's ship, heading for the open sea. During the voyage, the captain tells them that when he was a child, he was swimming with his board when he was attacked by a great white shark. Miraculously, he managed to survive, but he still has a memory of that day, with a huge bite mark around his back. Minutes later, Tucker stops on the high seas and throws pieces of meat into the water to attract the predators. After changing, Heather isn't sure if she really wants to go into the cage, but the captain calms her down, saying that he has developed a technique capable of reassuring new crew members. He then tells the two youngsters to close their eyes, take a deep breath and sing the Baby Shark theme song. Despite the unusual technique, Heather becomes calmer and enters the cage alongside Greg. As soon as the huge structure starts to descend, they both see a shoal of sharks of all kinds. At first, Heather despairs, but Greg holds her hand and she soon begins to see the sharks in a different light, as incredible animals that are just swimming through the sea. As soon as Tucker brings them back, Heather and Greg excitedly leave the cage and thank the captain for the incredible experience. However, in a surprise attack, Tucker hits Greg in the neck with a knife and throws him towards the sharks. He then turns to Heather with a sinister look on his face, while the girl screams in horror at what she has just seen. Far away, on the Gold Coast, a young surfer named Zephyr is enjoying the waves on the Australian beaches. Afterwards, she goes to a convenience store to get a drink, but on her way out she comes across a guy called Moses. He says he's a real estate agent and that he needs a battery connector cable to rewire his car. Zephyr unwillingly agrees to help, and when they arrive, she is surprised to see a surfboard in Moses's car. The two soon realize that they have a lot in common, and as soon as the car is fixed, Moses invites the young woman to see the city. The young woman accepts and the chance meeting soon turns into a romantic evening in Zephyr's van. The night goes quietly, and as soon as Zephyr falls asleep, Moses takes the opportunity to make breakfast. However, when he returns to take the food away, the young woman has already left in her car, because unlike him, she isn't up for anything serious at the moment. Minutes later, the girl parks her car in front of the shore and gets ready to catch some more waves. However, she ends up losing her key for her board, and when she looks around, she finds an old truck parked right in front of it. She goes to look for the key in the body, but is startled when Captain Tucker suddenly appears. She tells him she just wanted to get the key to adjust her board and the captain lends it to her, saying he'll come and get it later. The young woman thanks him for his help and goes to tighten her board's fins, when she sees Tucker driving away in his truck. Soon after, Zephyr receives a message from Moses on her cell phone, saying that he has prepared breakfast and wants to meet her to surf together. Zephyr thinks about accepting the invitation, but before she can reply, Captain Tucker grabs her and holds a plastic bag over her face. The young woman tries her best to free herself, but ends up fainting and is taken away by the guy in his truck. At dawn, Tucker carries Zephyr down to the ship's hold and leaves her locked in one of the compartments. Meanwhile, Moses goes to meet the young woman on the beach, but only finds her van parked and no sign of her anywhere. The strangest thing is that she has left her cell phone inside the van, indicating that she has been captured by someone. Moses then goes to the police station to report her missing, but he doesn't even know Zephyr's surname, and without more information, the officer can't do much about it. Back on Tucker's ship, Zephyr wakes up in a bed, her arm bound by handcuffs, and sees Heather, who is also being held prisoner. Heather quickly tries to find something to open the handcuffs when she sees the name Eva Cronin written on the wall. Not understanding what's going on, she continues to look for a way to break free, until she sees Heather wearing a bikini. The girl asks to borrow it to get the wire out of it and open the handcuffs, but just as she was about to do so, Tucker shows up, bringing water and food. Having been there for days, Heather accepts, but the captain notices that she is covering her body with the sheet. He asks where her bikini is, but Zephyr diverts his attention, saying that she also wants something to eat. The captain is surprised by her fearlessness, and after giving her food and water, he tells her that in the evening, the two of them will be part of a big show. As soon as Tucker leaves the room, Zephyr takes the opportunity to unlock the handcuffs, but the two young women start to feel dazed. Shortly afterwards, Heather ends up collapsing on the bed, while Zephyr tries to resist and ends up dropping the wire on the floor. Soon afterwards, Tucker returns to the bedroom and, realizing what Zephyr was doing, he brings a vest and takes the two girls up to the deck of the ship. Later, the young woman wakes up in a chair and sees Heather still unconscious and wearing the vest attached to a crane. Looking around, Zephyr comes across Captain Tucker, who has just finished positioning the camera to record a video. Finally, he goes over to Heather, cuts a lock of her hair and wakes her up, as she will be the main star of the show. Before the show begins, Tucker gives a speech about sharks, and that contrary to common belief, they are not dangerous animals. They just act on instinct, and after years of hunting, they have come to associate humans as a threat. So, to attract the predators, Tucker activates the crane and lifts Heather into the air, leaving her dangling just a few meters from the sea. In addition, he throws fish bait into the water, and as soon as the sharks start to arrive, Tucker lowers the young woman into the sea. As soon as Heather is half submerged, the guy points his camera to record the shark attack. Zephyr begs the captain not to do this, but unfortunately, it's too late and Heather is devoured by a shoal of sharks. The whole tragedy is recorded by Captain Tucker, while Zephyr watches in horror, unable to do anything. Afterwards, the captain takes the girl back to the hold, promising that the next night, she will be next. Zephyr weeps for what happened to the girl, and in a form of homage, writes Heather's name on the basement walls. However, she notices some spots on the wall with paint marks, and when she wipes them off, she sees more women's names written there. The young woman believes that the captain has already handed other women over to the sharks, and her suspicions are confirmed when Tucker's collection of tapes of other victims is revealed. The man likes to watch the videos while eating his meals and identifies all the recordings with locks of his victim's hair. Another day passes, and on the Gold Coast beach, Moses tries to distract himself by catching some waves, but he can't stop thinking about Zephyr. On his way back to his car, he sees a surfboard floating on the shore and suspects it was in the girl's van. Little does he know that Zephyr is still trapped in the hold of a ship, and at dawn, she receives another visit from Captain Tucker. He brings food and water, but assures her that this time, he hasn't put anything inside to make her sleep. Zephyr doesn't care and kicks the tray away, but the captain controls his anger and once again begins a speech about how sharks are at the top of the food chain. Not having the patience to listen to this, Zephyr interrupts him, saying that sharks are much better beings than Tucker will ever be. She goes on to tease him, accusing him of being someone who takes his traumas out on innocent women, and is therefore nothing but a coward. These words make Tucker uncomfortable, but he just walks away and shows her the bucket with the toilet paper, where Zephyr can do her business. However, as soon as the captain leaves the room, the young woman takes the bucket, removes the plastic handle and breaks it in half. She ends up leaving one of the halves with a sharp point, which she uses as a weapon for her next encounter with Captain Tucker. Meanwhile, the guy returns to the main deck and prepares a mixture using sleeping pills. After that, he heads to Zephyr's room and finds the girl in a deep sleep. The guy takes the opportunity to use the compound, but when she sees him approaching, Zephyr wakes up and hits the bucket handle on the man's shoulder, who falls backwards, hitting his head on the bed. Thanks to this, Tucker lies unconscious and the girl hurries to get the keys from his pocket and unlock the handcuffs. After that, she goes to check if there's anything else in his clothes, but the captain wakes up and grabs her arm. Zephyr manages to free herself and tries to lock him inside the room, but Tucker has more strength and prevents her from closing the door. The girl is then forced to flee, but as she is climbing the stairs, the captain grabs her leg and uses the sleeping pill on her. Nevertheless, Zephyr fights back and kicks the insane man, heading for the ship's control room. There, she unsuccessfully tries to get contact via radio, but sees a yacht crossing the sea nearby. The young woman runs up to the deck to call for help, but the sleeping pill begins to take effect and Zephyr loses strength. To make matters worse, Tucker appears and attacks the girl, who tries to run away and ends up bumping into the captain's camera. She then throws the camera into the sea and tries to swim towards the yacht. To her misfortune, Zephyr ends up passing out from the effects of the sleeping pill and is pulled back onto the ship by the captain. Another day passes and Moses again goes to the beach, hoping to find Zephyr, but there is no trace of where she is. The young man then decides to take a look at the recordings from the town's cameras, hoping to find something that shows where the girl is. Using his cell phone, Moses sees Zephyr's van crossing the street, but hours later, a pickup truck passes in the opposite direction. On the door of the vehicle, there is a sticker with the logo of the Tucker Experience, and on researching it, he discovers that it is an attraction organized by Captain Tucker. Suspecting that the guy has something to do with Zephyr's disappearance, Moses goes alone to the site in search of answers. At the same time, Tucker ties Zephyr's arms and legs to the bed and takes the ship back to port to buy a new camera. As a result, the ship is left unattended in the harbor, giving Moses the chance to board the vessel and search for Zephyr. Suddenly, he hears the sound of banging and muffled screams, and believing it to be the girl, he breaks into the ship, arms himself with a hook and sets off for the hold. Once there, Moses meets Zephyr, who is surprised to see him again, but there's no time to lose and the two of them have to get away. The young man then goes to the main deck to get something to unlock the handcuffs, but ends up running into Tucker, who knocks him down with a shove. Moses is undeterred and tries to take him on alone, but is defeated by the captain, who pins him to the wall and knocks him down with punches and kicks. In a last-ditch effort, Moses tries to warn the police, but Tucker throws his cell phone on the floor, throws the young man backwards and hits him in the back with the hook. The captain then kicks him in the face and prepares to deliver the final blow with the hook. However, Moses sees that Tucker has dropped the camera bag on the floor and uses it to knock the man out with a blow to the head. After that, Moses pushes the hook against the captain's neck and begins to pressure him. He's about to eliminate the guy, but Moses is hit on the head by Dave, a neighbor who also lives in the port and heard the screams coming from the ship. He never knew about Tucker's crimes and went to the ship to see if his friend was all right. Suddenly, Dave hears Zephyr's screams in the ship's hold, but before he can find out what's going on, Tucker eliminates him with a blow from the hook. Seeing his master being attacked, Dave's dog starts barking at the captain, but fortunately, the guy only scares the animal, which runs away to save itself. After this confrontation, the captain goes down to the cellar to see if Zephyr is still there and the young woman asks what happened to Moses. Tucker takes the intruder down to the hold, leaves him tied to the bed and goes to the ship's control room. When he gets there, he realizes that the ship is running low on fuel, but he still wants to make one more trip and chooses a point in the middle of the sea known as Hangman's Shoal. The ship then sails to this area and Moses wakes up in the hold, together with Zephyr. Although the rescue didn't work out, the two are happy to be reunited and the young woman thanks him for coming after her. Moses then asks why she left that morning and Zephyr simply replies that she's better off living alone. However, Moses doesn't believe it, but the conversation is interrupted by Tucker, who again brings the vest and says he's going to do something different for that day. Zephyr knows what this means and asks the guy to leave them alone, but Tucker knocks the two prisoners unconscious and takes them to the main deck. Minutes later, Zephyr wakes up in her chair and sees Moses, strapped into his vest and lifted out to sea by the crane. Just as he did with Heather, the captain activates the crane control and begins to lower the young man into the sea. Now all that's left is to watch everything on camera, and Tucker warns that now it's the turn of the bull shark, known as one of the most aggressive species. This seems to be the end of Moses, but Zephyr asks him not to move or make any noise while he's in the water. The plan works and the sharks take off, leaving their prey behind. The captain is surprised by this and brings Moses back, only to attack him with a blade and send him back into the sea. As he is losing blood, nothing will stop the sharks from devouring their prey. Tucker then begins to lower the young man back into the sea, but again he has to interrupt the show as a helicopter begins to fly overhead. Afraid of being discovered, the captain takes the two victims to the hold and watches the helicopter from the control room. Meanwhile, Moses begins to lose a lot of blood and Zephyr tries her best to free herself from the handcuffs, but she can't. With no other choice, the young woman decides to risk everything and dislocates her finger so that she can slip her hand through the cuff more easily. However, she is interrupted by the captain, who admits that he is amazed at Zephyr's determination to save her own life and that of Moses. However, the guy also makes fun of the situation, saying that the couple would never work together because Zephyr is like a shark, lonely and hardened by life. These words hit the girl hard, but as soon as Tucker leaves the room, she continues her plan to escape. Unfortunately for her, even with a dislocated finger it's not possible to get her hand through the handcuff, so Zephyr decides to take a drastic measure. In a last-ditch effort, the young woman begins to bite her own hand, removing her thumb and managing to break free. Finally, the night arrives for Zephyr's recording, and after getting everything ready, Tucker goes to pick up his two guests. However, all he finds is a bandage on Moses's wound and a bloodstained sheet covering Zephyr's bed. When he removes the sheet, the man sees the finger removed by the girl, who was hiding behind the door, and runs off, leaving the captain locked inside. She then goes to the control room and tries to accelerate the boat towards the coast. However, Tucker had a wrench in his pocket, and with it he manages to remove the door bolts and escapes from the hold. Shortly afterwards, he goes to the engine room and disables the electrical system, causing the ship to drift at sea. Zephyr despairs at this and tries to find something to defend herself, when she finds a box containing several flares. Just then, the captain appears and tries to attack her, but she knocks him down by firing one of the flares at Tucker. After that, the young woman runs to the kitchen and tries to escape through a passage in the ceiling, but is stopped by Tucker, who pulls her by the leg. The two start a confrontation, with Tucker advancing towards her with a penknife, but the young woman strikes back with a frying pan blow to the man's face. Zephyr then jumps into the water and swims as fast as she can to a beach, which is lit up with lights around the shore. Despite his efforts, Tucker sees the young woman running away and manages to catch up with her in his motorized dinghy. As soon as they reach dry land, Zephyr screams for help, but the captain pins her to the ground, causing her to faint. Unfortunately, Zephyr is taken back, and following his tradition, the captain hangs her on the crane to be delivered to the sharks. Moses, still weak from having lost a lot of blood, watches helplessly, and at that moment, nothing less than a great white shark appears in the sea. Tucker has always wanted to see one of its kind again and rushes to lower Zephyr into the sea and record everything on his new camera. However, other sharks show up to spoil the show and the captain tries to chase them away with the hook, but ends up dropping the weapon into the sea. With no time to lose, Zephyr grabs the hook and tries to use it to climb the crane, but her vest comes loose and she falls into the water. In the middle of the dark sea, the young woman sees the huge predator coming towards her, but instead of despairing, she remains calm and doesn't make any sudden movements. Just as Moses managed to escape from the sharks, Zephyr is also ignored by the great white, which takes off into the sea. Only narrowly saved, Zephyr seizes the chance and sneaks onto the boat, where she finds a gun on the floor that fires harpoons. She then aims it at the captain, who is distracted by the sea and looking for the great white shark. To his misfortune, as he turns around, he comes across Zephyr, who without hesitation throws the harpoon at Tucker, who is pushed underwater. He tries to swim back to the ship, but the great white smells his blood and in one leap devours Captain Tucker. The problem is that the harpoon stuck in Tucker's body was tied to a rope, and as soon as the shark moves away, it starts pulling on it. Zephyr realizes too late that the rope was under her foot and is pulled into the water. Moses screams for the girl and fears the worst has happened, but fortunately Zephyr manages to free herself and swims back to the ship. Now that the nightmare is over, the young woman sees an illuminated yacht crossing the sea and rushes to get the flares. She then climbs to the top of the ship and waves the flares, shouting for help. The yacht's captain responds with a warning sound, indicating that help is on the way. Now all that remains is to wait for rescue, but Zephyr finds Moses unconscious, having lost a lot of blood. Fearing for his life, Zephyr tries to get him to wake up, saying that thanks to him, she has finally found a reason not to live alone and to be attached to someone. At that moment, Moses wakes up, saying that he already knew that answer, and the two look at each other relieved, waiting for rescue to arrive. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.